Hello there, my name is Lalit Vijaydoru. Thanks for checking out Behind Your Mask. As Behind Your Mask is about storytelling, I thought I would put my money where my mouth is and share a story with you. The story is called Changes. Normally I help staff members bring out their story in front of their work colleagues, so how appropriate for this story, called Changes, that I have flipped from my normal role of facilitator to being a storyteller. The story I want to share with you today is about a specific type of change, my change in career. I want to describe the journey of how I came to the decision to hand in my letter of resignation to the hospital where I worked as a doctor, give up my license to practice as a consultant pediatrician, and to set up my own company in emotional and physical well-being. Storytellers and facilitators from the last hospital where I worked featured in an art exhibition at the Tate Liverpool depicting NHS workers. When I saw the group portrait for the first time in mid-December 2020, I confess I never really knew what it meant to burst with pride until that moment. I was profoundly humbled to see staff roles which didn't normally get the media exposure compared to frontline doctors and nurses in these two group portraits. There was a porter, healthcare assistant, psychologist, secretary, play specialist, housekeeper, manager, and nurse practitioners. The artist, Alisa Nissenbaum, included artistic representations of those staff stories within her paintings. My feelings were of hope, admiration, and respect for the whole healthcare team I was a part of. But there was another intense feeling that I felt when I stood in the Tate Liverpool gallery looking at those portraits. It was a gnawing pain in my left hip. Within 48 hours, I was in A&E fighting back tears from being in exquisite pain. I was given a working diagnosis of calcific tendonitis and trochanteric bursitis, which essentially is a severe inflammation of the tendons and shock absorbers around my hip. As the next lockdown loomed over Christmas and New Year 2020, I had become physically disabled. For someone who lives alone and who has a morbid fear of dependency, those were a very hard 3 months, both physically and emotionally. Socrates once wrote, "If you marry well, you will have a good life. If you don't marry well, you will become a philosopher." For me, the lockdowns of the pandemic equated to a loveless marriage, no touch, and being separated from the ones I love. Compounded by physical disability, I can tell you I became quite the philosopher between December 2020 and April 2021. I cannot express how frustrated I was with the inadequacies of telephone physiotherapy consultations. When I questioned how the physio could possibly advise me on how to rehabilitate my inflamed hip without examining me or arranging for any imaging, she said, "Listen to your body." What? I mean, that's the treatment for a normally fit male who can't walk, who's not been examined, who's not had an MRI scan to establish a definitive diagnosis. I was simply enraged and frustrated by her response. So to help heal myself, I turned to a gentler stretch-based form of yoga called yin yoga, which targets deep connective tissues between muscles. In Eastern medicine, the hip and pelvic chakras are responsible for holding much of our human emotional baggage, including fear, frustration, and shame. The online yoga instructors often spoke how our hips and pelvis are important vehicles for change. Our hips control our body's physical changes in direction. So while attempting long and painful stretches to my hip, now it was the yoga instructor's turn to say those patronizing words. Listen to your body. So between November 2020 and March 2021, a select number of departmental staff where I worked, including myself, wore a cardiac monitor as part of a well-being grant called Perform at Your Peak. This was to help individuals identify periods of their own stress and recovery, at both home as well as at work. So my biofeedback data report showed that apart from being asleep, the only healthy recovery periods during my working day was when I was doing storytelling sessions, such as facilitating sessions and preparing storytellers. Interestingly, the highest point of calmness was when I was being compassionate with the storytellers during their debrief after the storytelling sessions had finished. As part of my own leadership development, I was asked by an NHS Northwest Leadership Academy coach to list my top 3 values from a preset group of cards. The dominant themes that emerged for me were 1. Self-development or development of others, 2. People, intimacy and connection, and 3. Compassion and caring. So this got me seriously thinking, am I ignoring that I'm now more interested in the humanity, motivation and emotions of humans rather than their anatomy and physiology? So being part of a winning team for the Health Services Journal, HSJ Award for staff engagement, and also part of a team for the Point of Care Foundation Award for Most Powerful Storytelling round in early spring, this gave me a further external validation to my increasing self-awareness of where I felt I was making impact and where my energies were naturally being driven towards. Being disabled philosopher in a loveless marriage of lockdown life made me think long and hard about who I am, what my purpose is, and importantly, what would make me happy. I realized through all of this adversity that growth can occur following physical and emotional trauma. I think that the overlap of my hip pain, the cardiac monitoring results, the national awards, the Tate Liverpool portraits, the mismatch of my values in relation to my job at the time, the loveless lockdowns of the pandemic, these interlinked circumstances were all more than just mere coincidences. The universe was and still is trying to tell me something. Storytelling involves deep listening with the intent to understand rather than the intent to reply. Despite being exasperated at the physiotherapists and the yoga instructors telling me to listen to your body, it really was good advice. I have listened to myself, and it is that astute listening to myself that has led to a profound change in my career. Behind Your Mask is one of 3 arms of a well-being company. It is about storytelling for staff, where through the projection of stories and the reflection of shared experiences and emotions, that staff can become more connected with each other. I'm excited, motivated, and buzzing with ideas to help make a difference for staff working in both public and private sectors. For my friends and colleagues who have, over many years, tolerated my compulsion of expressing my messages through song and song lyrics, here are 3 songs dedicated to the messages I want to leave you with. Hips Don't Lie by Shakira. Listen to Your Heart, or in my case, Listen to Your Heart Monitor, by Roxette. And finally, Touch My Body by Mariah Carey. Thanks for listening.